Japan's economic rebound looks like a comeback story, but beneath it sits a risk the global economy cannot ignore. Japan is often treated as a single country trying to escape decades of slow growth, but Japan is not isolated. It sits at the center of global debt markets, major supply chains, and international capital flows. When Japan changes direction, the impact spreads far beyond its borders. This video explains why Japan's rebound is not a local recovery story, but a global risk story with consequences for markets, trade, and stability worldwide. Because once the full picture comes into focus, it becomes clear that Japan is not just recovering, it is holding up part of the global system, and the cost of failure would not stay contained. Japan's role in the global economy begins with its debt. Japan carries one of the largest public debt loads ever recorded in a major economy. Government debt equals hundreds of percent of national output, reaching into the tens of trillions of dollars. For decades, this did not trigger alarm. Interest rates stayed near zero. The central bank stepped in repeatedly, buying massive amounts of government bonds. Domestic banks, insurers, and pension funds absorbed the rest. The system became stable, but also fragile in a different way. It depended entirely on low rates continuing forever. That assumption no longer holds. Inflation has returned. Bond yields have started to rise, and when debt is this large, even small rate moves change the math fast. What once looked sustainable begins to look uncertain. Japan is now walking a narrow path. On one side is rising inflation and pressure to normalize policy. On the other is a massive debt load that becomes harder to manage as rates climb. Japan must refinance huge amounts of debt year after year. Higher yields mean higher costs over time, tightening the government budget. At the same time, Japan's bond market is deeply tied into global finance. Investors around the world use Japanese bonds as reference points, hedges, and funding tools. Changes in Japan's yields ripple outward. If confidence weakens, bond prices fall, global yields rise, and financial conditions tighten everywhere. Japan is not expected to fail, but if it did, the shock would be immediate and global. This is why markets treat Japan as a quiet but critical risk. Japan's importance is not limited to finance. It remains a core supplier to the global economy. Japanese firms produce automobiles, machinery, robotics, and precision equipment that power factories across Asia, Europe, and the United States. These are not optional inputs. They sit deep inside global value chains. As companies rethink supply chains and search for reliability, Japan's role has grown more important, not less. But supply chains depend on stability. A stalled rebound, a sharp slowdown, or a currency shock will ripple through production schedules and corporate earnings worldwide. A stable Japan supports global trade. An unstable Japan disrupts it. Japan's currency amplifies these risks. The yen is one of the most actively traded currencies in the world. For years, low Japanese rates encouraged borrowing in yen and investing elsewhere. That strategy linked the yen directly to global asset prices. When the yen moves slowly, markets adjust. When it moves fast, positions unwind. Sharp yen swings have historically increased volatility across regions and asset classes. This is why officials closely monitor the currency. It is not just a reflection of Japan's economy. It is a transmission channel for global stress. A disorderly yen move would not stay local. Japan's influence also travels through capital. Japanese banks, insurers, and pension funds are among the largest investors abroad. They hold vast amounts of foreign bonds and assets. This capital helps keep global markets liquid and borrowing costs lower. But capital flows can reverse. If stress builds at home, these institutions may sell overseas assets and bring money back to Japan. This process can happen quickly and at scale. The result would be higher global bond yields, pressure on stock markets, and sharper currency swings. Japan's savings do not just support its own economy. They support the global one. What does Japan's economy have to do with regional stability? Economic strength underpins long-term security commitments. Japan's economy supports defense spending, advanced technology development, and deep cooperation with regional partners. Most analysts believe Japan remains strong enough to expand these roles, but a severe economic setback would change the picture. Lower growth and fiscal stress would limit long-term commitments and strain cooperation efforts. A weakened economy would not just slow Japan, it would weaken the economic backbone of stability in the Asia Pacific. The next phase for Japan is no longer abstract. Markets are already positioning for what comes next, and the range of outcomes is narrowing. There are three paths forward. The first is the soft landing. Japan's rebound holds. Growth remains steady. Interest rates rise slowly. Debt stays large but predictable. Supply chains remain reliable. Global markets adapt instead of reacting. In this outcome, Japan acts as a stabilizer in a fragile system. The second path is the slow bleed. Growth fades again, debt remains heavy, confidence never fully returns. Nothing breaks, but nothing heals. Uncertainty becomes permanent. Investment slows, long-term plans are delayed. The system keeps moving, but under strain. Then there is the third path, the shock. A sudden bond sell-off, a sharp currency move. Confidence breaks faster than responses can form. Capital rushes home. Yields spike worldwide. Risk is repriced everywhere at once. This is the scenario that turns a domestic problem into a global one. Japan's rebound is not about proving that stagnation can be reversed. It is about whether one of the world's largest debt anchors can remain stable in a higher rate world. It is about whether supply chains, bond markets, and capital flows can adjust without panic. Japan does not need explosive growth. It simply cannot stumble. Because if Japan fails here, the warning signs will not appear first in headlines. They will appear in yields, in currencies, in capital flows, and by the time the world notices, the damage will already be done.